What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we're going to go over the lever action rifle, specifically some problems that you might run into when running a lever action rifle. Now this topic has come up on my channel over and over again. We've been doing more lever action content because personally I'm a fan of the lever action. I've shot lever actions all my life. My first rifle was a lever action. I got a whole bunch of bunnies with that bad boy and I was hooked ever since. I have almost all of the most popular lever action rifles and I have tons of trigger time on them. And during that time, I've also trained people that were inexperienced with lever action rifles and found out that it doesn't come so intuitively to everybody. Some people are gonna have issues with lever action rifles, some more than others, and some people, depending on the model of lever action and the caliber of lever action, are gonna have different problems. So today I wanted to outline or just go for an overview of the 10 biggest problems I see with lever action rifles. Now I'm not saying that they're bad. They're super useful and they've been useful for a long time. All the way back in 1860 this gun was kicking ass and it still does. That being said, it does have some deficiencies compared to modern rifles. Now why is this even relevant? Well, the first reason why we're making this video is because lever action rifles are bigger now than they've ever been, just because of all of the banned states, including Illinois, which banned basically every gun. I myself have kitted out a lever action rifle because I live in Iowa right next door to it. Many states now only have lever action rifles that are legal as far as repeat loading rifles, so it's very, very useful in modern day society. If you can't get a semi-automatic rifle, a lever action rifle, in my opinion, is the next best choice. So I want to go over some of the pitfalls that you might find out and how to train out of those issues. Now before we do that, I do want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. You guys provided most of the guns and ammunition on the channel and I appreciate that. We try to be the most honest gun channel on the internet for you guys and we thank you for your support. If you want to support us, just go to the link in the description below and sign up. If you're not interested in Patreon, YouTube Super Thanks works just as well. Also in that description is a link to a local shelter in Ames, Iowa. It's the YSS. Please go down and donate to those kids. They could really use your help. And I also want to mention the Gundies. The Gundies is a yearly internet award ceremony for gun guys like myself. Last year I won Best Gun Reviewer because from all the people that voted for me, and I can't thank you enough. If you want to vote for me again this year, please go down to the link in the description. I'd appreciate it. You can vote once a day. Now let's get into the first one here, and I think it's the most relevant because it's one of the biggest problems, and it's going to start off right when you get the gun. Let's talk about loading the gun. So on a Winchester, as you can see here, this is a Winchester 1873. This is one of my favorite guns, one of the guns that won the West. Now, the way that you load the Winchester rifle, which is one of two variants that are the most popular. There's two ways to load a lever action rifle generally. One is the Winchester loading gate, and the second is generally under barrel on the Henry. Now, this Henry and the new modern Henrys actually have both the loading gate there as well. Now, the loading gate can be a real pain in the ass to people that have never tried it before, simply because, especially at a new gun, it can be very tight before it gets worn in, and sometimes it takes a special technique to actually get the rounds in. So if it's really tight and you can't get her in there, there's so many sexual innuendos going on already. My wife's laughing behind the camera. But you take the first round, and if you can't get the round all the way in, you kind of fit it halfway in like that, and this is a 357 Magnum, and then you just push the second round in like that, and you half load over and over again. And on the final one, you just push it all the way through. So that's the first way. That can be a real issue with a lot of people that have never loaded one before or don't simply know that technique, because some of these can be really tight, and especially if you have weaker fingers, it can be a real problem. Now, even though it's a little bit more difficult to put it through the loading gate, I do prefer this method of loading simply because you can continuously top off your rifle while you're shooting, as opposed to the Henry way, which is easier on your hands. However, very difficult to do, especially during a situation of some kind, because you have to take the rod all the way out and put it all the way back in. It can be a real pain in the ass. So I prefer this way, although you do have to practice it just a little bit. Now, the second thing you're going to have to be concerned about after you've loaded the gun is short stroking the lever. So if we're going to load the lever, we want it all the way out and all the way in. All the way out, all the way in. And I can't stress that enough. You don't baby it, you don't do it super hard as you can, but you just firm all the way out and all the way in. You can see the rounds are popping out the top because it's an 1873. It does look kind of cool in all fairness. But that's the biggest thing. If you don't push the lever all the way out and all the way back in, if you go halfway out and halfway in, it's going to short stroke the lever and you're going to have feeding issues. And that's going to be the second problem into the third problem. So if you cause a feeding issue with an 1873 or something like this Henry, there's not a lot of space in there to actually fix the problem. So number 3 is gonna be clearing malfunctions. If you cause a malfunction, you're gonna have some problem. You better have a pocket knife. I know a lot of times when I was a kid, we would cause failures into my Henry Golden Boy, my little 22, and we'd always be digging rounds out of there with a freaking pocket knife because there's just simply no space to get in there and fix anything. Worst case scenario on something like an AR and AK, you can take the gun apart. That's very difficult to do with a lever action. This is kind of an enclosed system by comparison. It doesn't come apart with an upper and lower quite as easy. So first problem, stroking the lever. Second problem, throwing the lever all the way back and forth. Third problem, clearing malfunctions. Now, as long as you get the lever action down, you shouldn't cause yourself too many malfunctions, but it does happen occasionally, and it can actually happen with different types of ammunition. Because the unique part about these guns is not only will this gun take 38 Special and 357 Magnum, so it takes both. So if it's chambered in 357 Magnum, it'll also fire 38 Special, but not all 38 Special. So keep that in mind. Case length, the length of the bullet depends a lot on how reliable the gun is gonna be overall. So if you have a slightly shorter or longer bullet, sometimes it doesn't work, and you're gonna have to figure out what your gun is gonna like. That's gonna be the fourth problem. It's gonna be ammunition picky. So you can run both ammunitions, but you're gonna have problems with certain types of 357, certain types of 38, and you're gonna have to vet that ammunition through your platform first. Same goes with the 44 Magnum. This is a 44 Magnum Henry, and this will take 44 Special, as you can see on there. These are my cowboy loads, my light loads, and it'll also take 44 Magnum. But again, you have to make sure that you try that ammunition type before you use it for self-defense or hunting or anything like that, because you can have feeding issues, and those feeding issues are, again, very difficult to solve. Now we'll get into number 5 here, and number 5 is an issue with capacity. So not only could you have a problem loading, not only could you have an issue short stroking a gun, you could have an issue with what type of ammunition that you have, but you actually don't have nearly as much ammunition in the shorter guns as you do the longer gun. I'm out. So because the feeding tube, just like a shotgun, is underneath the barrel, it's actually dependent upon barrel length on how much capacity that you can have. So you can have somewhere between usually 6 to 7 to even 10 or 11 or 13 rounds, but in order to get those high capacity guns, you have to have a longer and longer barrel length, which is why the 20-inch barrels on the lever actions are a lot more popular. However, for self-defense and home defense, I prefer the 16s. And because of I get that usability and I get that tight little package that I can go around corners nice and easy, or I can store in my truck nice and easy, I have to accept a limited capacity because of that. So not only can you have some problems with feeding, but you also have a limited capacity you have to be aware of, so you will be constantly thumbing those rounds in during your range session. And it is fun, and it gives you lots of practice, but it can be tedious after a while, and that's one thing you have to be aware of, is guns like these are just, they're not as easy for smaller statured shooters because there is no self-loading or anything like that. Everything done on the gun has to be done manually. So you get used to it over time and you build muscle memory and you get really good and really fast at it, but it does take a lot more practice to run one of these successfully than it does something like an AR or an AK. Now, an issue on some models and not on others is going to be the buckhorn sights. Most of these guns come with buckhorn style sights. Now, my Winchester 1873 here came with a pretty awesome setup of sights that's not only windage but elevation adjustable. And as you can see, it kind of looks like a very fine handgun round there with a very fine rear notch and a front sight there that's actually gold, so it does stand out. So not only does it have some contrast, but it has a really fine sight picture, which I like. Now, if you get something like this Henry, and although I love this Henry, I put a dot on this guy for a reason. It has one of these gigantic buckhorn sights that we'll have to show in filler, but the sight is so wide and it has such a gap or such an error box in it that it's really only usable 0 to 50 yards. And in my personal opinion, they're probably one of the worst sights ever created by humans. So some of the sights are great, some of the sights are bad. You're really gonna have to pick them up and figure out which one you like. But most of the new Henrys are drilled and tapped already for a $35 rail. So you can put dots on them if you want to and make like a little steampunk thing like I got going on here. And it's fun, it's cool, and they're super effective. Now, another issue that you're gonna have along with the sights is certain models are incapable of having optics. So if you're looking to put an optic on a lever action rifle and join the Cool Kids Club, make sure to pick the right one. Because even though the 1873 is one of the oldest, the coolest, and arguably has the slickest action of any lever action rifle, because of its top ejecting system, it is incapable of having a red dot mounted to it, or at least in the conventional sense. You're not going to be able to drill and tap anything on there, so be aware of that when you get the gun, that if you're interested in putting an optic on it, if you only like optics. Personally, I like optics for serious situations, competition, self-defense, and hunting. All three of those applications, I personally choose a red dot because I believe they're a force multiplier, because it's easier to threat focus and you don't have to focus on the sights, and when you're jittery and jacked up, it's just easier to make a shot. That being said, you're going to be incapable of doing that on a platform like this, so you better get used to the iron sights. Now, along the lines of the dot, you're also going to have issues with your other accessories. What a surprise. Guns made 100 years ago, or at least designed 100 years ago, are not as modular as guns today. You can't knock them for that. They're just an older design. They have a cool factor that the new guns don't have, but they don't have the modularity the new guns have either. So there are models, like I'm going to show in the filler right now, tactical models of lever actions that you can adjust and change and everything like that. And you can change the handguard and you can change the stock on almost every lever action rifle. They do make M-LOK adaptable ones where you can put lights and stuff on them, but as they are, it's very difficult to mount a light. It's harder to mount a sling. You have a sling points here and here, and that hangs underneath the gun. But if you like the rifle to sit like this with a sling out the top, like I personally do with my ARs, you have to buy an aftermarket sling mounting system. If you want to have ammunition on the gun, you have to buy an aftermarket cheek piece. If you want to put a dot on the gun, you have to buy the rail and put the dot on it. Even my tactical Henry didn't even come with a rail. It has the ability to put one on, but you see where I'm going with this. So you are going to have to spend money in aftermarket accessories that the gun's not going to come with, and you can't just take a Surefire light and put it right on the gun. You're after going to find an obscure mounting system, or you're going to have to change the rail out. And this cool walnut looks so good that I just haven't done it yet. Now, along the lines of that as well, the options aren't going to be as easy to find either, because even though sometimes the rail mounting systems exist or the stocks exist, they're usually out of stock, or they're only made by a couple of companies, where you can kind of get Magpul furniture from an AR literally anywhere. So not only are they going to be harder to put on originally, they're going to be harder to find and source as well. To continue on with that thread, they're also going to be less user adjustable. So if you want to adjust the length of pull, if you want to make it shorter, you have to cut the stock generally. If you want to make it longer, you can get something like this, and these sleeves actually come with spacers in them, and I actually have a couple in there because I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'4". So you slide this sleeve on there, and there's rubber spacers in there, and it's super easy. It's like 30 bucks on Amazon, and I think it looks kind of good actually. And then that's how you make your length of pull longer, but you can't adjust it from person to person like an AR. For example, I'm 6'4", my wife's 5'2", so our length of pull on rifles is slightly different. So for home defense, ARs are nice because you can adjust it in, adjust it out. And finally, I think the last problem that I'm gonna highlight is gonna be limited caliber options. So you can see here, this is a 357, this is a 44 mag. I also have a 30-30, I also have a 45-70, and several other calibers including 22. That being said, more popular calibers like 5.56, for example, or 308 or 9mm are much more difficult to find. Now, cool thing is, and I hopefully I'm going to be getting one this year, but POF just came out with a 9mm lever action that takes magazines that hopefully we'll have on the channel here pretty soon. But other than that, there's not a lot of popular cheap available calibers that are in lever action rifles, and the reason for that, and the reason why they generally have flat nose or pistol calibers, is because of the way that the tube is actually designed in the first place. You don't really want a sharp rifle round sitting behind the primer of another sharp rifle round. At least that's to my understanding. I don't want to get too crazy on that because I'm not super sure, but they do make some 30-06 and some 308 lever action rifles, and on top of that you can get Leverlution ammunition from Hornady that kind of mimics a rifle round out of a pistol round, makes it a little more ergonomic, adds a little bit of range. But in all fairness, for most hunting applications and most self-defense applications, other than like WROL or like a wartime situation, I think the calibers that are represented in the lever action rifle are more than sufficient. 44 Magnum like this out of even a 16-inch barrel can kill a deer pretty easy out to 150 yards. 30-30 has been killing deer forever, and 45-70 has been killing deer and humans for even longer. So I think the calibers that are available in the gun are certainly formidable and useful. However, they're just going to be limited and can be more expensive than some of the calibers that you'll find in, let's say, a Mini 14, an AR, or an AK. So overall, you're gonna have to make some concessions and you're gonna have to make some compromises if you wanna run something cool like this lever action rifle, or if you live in a band state where this is all you can get. That being said, with the right ammunition, the right gear, and especially the right training, which is the most important thing, a gun like this can be very useful and very formidable in a home defense situation. If you want a home defense rifle, I think take a look at a lever action, especially if you're in a band state. I prefer it over a pump shotgun simply because of the surgical nature of a rifle. You can take a hostage shot, for example, or you can shoot a very strategic shot very close, whereas a shotgun doesn't give you that option. They have a little bit more capacity, and they are a little bit less recoil than a shotgun as well. So in that regard, they are a little bit better for smaller statured shooters, but take note, without training, especially for smaller stature shooters, a lever action is going to be an issue. So I would probably start them off on a 22, move up to a 357 and put 38s in it so it's real nice and smooth, and go from there. Have some fun on the range, live your cowboy dream, and have fun while also being good at self-defense. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please support your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later. Wow, I'm cold. I think my balls froze to this fucking seat.
I'm pretty cold too.
It's so cold out here.
I'm doing the cold dance.
Wow.